for everyone that's listening, first of all, thank you so much for listening again to the Room for Growth podcast. Today, I'm talking with a person that's very, very special to us because she has been with us since day one. She's actually the first person ever I signed up for my trips. I don't know if you knew that, but you were my first
I know that. That's amazing. I'm honored.
via the Instagram reel. And I want to share Erin's story because I think it's very inspiring. And I've been her friend now for almost 2.5 to 3 years. And I've seen her company grow from just being a single freelancer to now having a little team. So before we dive into it, Erin, I want to ask you one question. Where do you personally feel you've grown the most in the past year? And in which area do you feel there's room for growth?
Yeah, great question. That's kind of the theme of the day, right? So I think that the places that I've grown the most have to do with letting go of control. As you mentioned, I went from being a single freelancer to building a little team. That was very, very hard for me. I'm very particular about what I put my name on. I also sort of have a control issue when it comes to my business, I would say. So it's really hard to trust other people to come into that and also take pride in the work that we do. Like I have built that little team now in the last year, and I'm very proud of the team that I have. They're excellent, excellent people. They take a lot of pride in the work that they do. So yeah, that's definitely the area that I feel like I've grown the most is just sort of relinquishing that control, learning to delegate, and learning to just kind of go with the flow wherever this business takes me and not try to, control it too much. Where I feel like I could still continue to grow, and I have seen some growth in the past year, is just building out better processes, better workflows, finding better balance. I definitely have found better balance than I had the first 2 years of my business. And the retreats, honestly, that I went on with you taught me a lot about business workflows and business processes that we've implemented since then. But I feel like there's always room for growth there. We're subject matter experts when it comes to marketing. We are not subject matter experts when it comes to running a business. And I think that's a lot of people's stories. And so that is always a work in progress.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing that. And I really recognize that what you just mentioned because when you start your business, you just start with systems for yourself. And the moment your company starts growing, all of a sudden you have to let go of control, create systems and workflows that people actually understand and can follow, and it makes sense for everyone. So
100%.
it's something completely different, right, than your expertise.
It is. And it made me realize also maybe how unorganized I had been with myself, because I had just gotten used to very unorganized systems. Things were all over the place. Things were just up in my brain all the time. And so it's helped me to sort of like brain dump, get everything out on paper, put it into a project management software so that it's good for everybody else, but it's also working a lot better for me personally.
Thank you, Erin. I have a question for the people listening. Can you please share a little bit more about you and what you're doing? Because, I know you run a marketing agency specialized in outdoor travel, and now you're also working with local companies. But I want to hear it from your side. Can you share a little bit more in depth what you're doing exactly? And also, how did you get there?
Yes, very, very windy road, but it's been a fun one. So I guess I'll just start with how it all came to be. I used to be a civil engineer working on construction sites, building apartment complexes. It was not my favorite thing in the world. I was working around the clock. I was working weekends. I just felt like I didn't have life. It wasn't very creative. And I just decided I needed to make a change. So, like a lot of people during the pandemic, when the gig economy was kind of alive and well, I decided to try my hand at copywriting, which is basically writing for the purposes of marketing. And I've always liked writing. And so I started kind of doing it on the side, still working my full-time job, got a couple clients, absolutely loved it, took a couple courses and decided to just jump, feet first. And I told my husband at the time, well, my husband now, but at the time I told him that I would give myself a year. And if I wasn't making money in a year, then I'd go back to engineering. Always good to have a fallback plan. And in the 11th month, I signed my first big contract and kind of, buzzer beater, started this company. And so from there, it really grew. I landed two key clients, I would say, early on. They were both agencies. And why they were key is because I had no idea what I was doing in the marketing world. I was the definition of fake it until you make it. And so when I started working with these agencies, one was a search engine optimization specialty, and one was more of like a social media focus with some website work and some other things like that. So through that, I got to work with two very, very professional teams. They were experts in their field. I learned everything I know from these teams and then some. And so those first couple of years freelancing for those agencies were really pivotal in teaching me what I needed to know about building my own agency, building my own team and client management and all of the fun things that come with running your own business. That's sort of how I fell into this world of marketing. It was a very windy road to get here. Yeah, freelancing with those agencies was key. And then from there, I just kept building my network on LinkedIn, doing some in-person marketing, saying yes to projects that I had no idea how to do and learning them later, and just sort of building my portfolio. And from there, I've built up a pretty big network, pretty big name for the company. And yeah, at that point, I just had too much work on my plate for a single person. So I brought on a team member who happens to be my little brother, and he and I work extremely well together. We have very similar styles of work. And we built up what's now Indigo Media Solutions. So what used to just be Erin Salisbury Copywriting is Indigo Media Solutions. We are a marketing agency for outdoor rec and travel brands. We specialize in search engine optimization, email marketing, website builds, and paid ad strategies. From there, we've also pivoted a little bit in the last year. So there's a lot of fun to be had in that industry, but with the economy, there's lots of ups and downs in that industry as well. And we saw a huge need in both of our communities for local marketing strategies just for local businesses. We had a lot of local businesses coming to us and saying, we have no idea what to do, but we know we need more people picking up the phone, more people walking in the door. So we decided to open a DBA called Woodcrest Marketing, named after the street that we grew up on. We hired a couple of contractors that are experts in paid ads for local companies, and we've just sort of rolled that out, and that's been taking off over the last 6 to 8 months. And it's also been so fun. We had no idea that we would love it so much, but working with local businesses that we love in our own communities has been so fulfilling. That's where we're at now. Lots of pivots, lots of, big decisions along the way, but it's all working out how it's supposed to.
That was a very good, quick recap. And I want to dive a bit deeper into a few things you mentioned.
Sure.
Because you mentioned the first 11 months you did not manage to make money.
Yes.
And you gave yourself 1 year, and exactly 1 month before that final year, you managed to land your first client. I want to dive a bit deeper into your mindset because working 11 months very hard and not seeing any results, I think it's very impressive. So, do you remember something like how did you feel during those periods? And also, how did you continue working while experiencing like no money that came in?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it was a little scary, to be honest. I think having that fallback plan, having my degree in civil engineering was a nice safety net. So that definitely helped. But I think what I had to do in that 1 year was I had to reframe what success meant to me. So I actually landed several clients during that 11-month period. I didn't take any money from them because to me, I wanted to prove to myself that the work that I did was good work, that it produced results for clients. I never wanted to take somebody's money unless I felt like I could produce them money through the marketing that I was producing. Just for my own confidence, my own imposter syndrome, my own desire to prove myself in the industry, it kind of voluntarily didn't take money during that time. But to me, success meant one, that I was seeing results from my clients. That's the biggest thing that I still carry with me today. I never want to take somebody's money unless I'm going to produce an ROI. And two, building my network. I knew that at some point a network is like a snowball. So I started with nothing and I had to kick that snowball uphill until I got to the top and it could start rolling downhill on its own, and just keep building from there. So I measured my success in one, results for clients, and two, how big and how rich my network was, full of people that I knew were going to be great connections for me, knew were going to be potentially people that would send leads my way so that I didn't always have to do such manual like lead generation the entire existence of my business, because that is such a time suck. So yeah, I think just redefining success, seeing wins that didn't necessarily apply like monetarily, like they weren't, it wasn't that my pockets were getting lined. But I did feel like I was being successful in the sense that I was building something. And every day I saw more and more growth in those areas. So that was what kind of kept me going. Also, my husband, he was very supportive. And we did a lot of
Unguessable.
penny pinching during that time. But he was all on board. And yeah, it was a hard time, but it was also very exciting to feel like I was building something that I could own.
Yeah, and I think that is such a strong mindset, right? I see that mistake happening in the entrepreneurial world. People start something and then they immediately want to charge themselves from day one, the highest budget, the highest price, and then they're losing clients because they do not have the experience yet. And I think it's very beautiful what you did. You just helped people for free because you wanted to prove to yourself and build skills like, okay, I'm going to do this, and results happens. And then eventually the moment you start charging money, you also feel confident because you know you build the skills and you're not just in there for as a person that's just starting out.
100%. I definitely wanted to be someone that provided a lot of value through the services that I offered. And when you're offering something for free to someone, they give you a lot of leeway to experiment. And you learn a lot when you're allowed to experiment with their marketing. So it was, in my mind, I wasn't making money, but I was almost taking like college courses for free because I was gaining all of this knowledge and it didn't cost anybody anything. It didn't cost me anything to learn. It didn't cost them to get some free marketing. And we all just got to kind of experiment together. And that's how I really honed my skills and honed in on what skills I wanted to offer, which ones were working well, which ones I actually felt like I was good at. Because my biggest fear as a business owner is not providing value when I sell someone the value that claim to provide. So yeah, I just really needed to make sure that I could do that first.
You also mentioned that you were experiencing imposter syndrome. And how did you handle that? Because we all experience imposter syndrome, but then you have two choices, right? You can decide to let that voice take over and
Mhm.
makes you freeze that you're not taking any action, or you can decide to challenge it and take actions. I'm just curious if you want to share, of course, what were some of those thoughts, like the
Yeah.
imposter syndrome? Like, how did you experience it? And eventually, also, how did you ignore it and still continue building?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, when I wasn't charging anything, imposter syndrome was not an issue because if nothing worked, then no harm, no foul. Nobody's out money. The second that I started charging people money for my services, it hit me like a ton of bricks. I really deeply feel the responsibility that comes with taking somebody's money. And because to me, for them, marketing should not be an expense. It should be an investment. It should be something that produces more money than they spent every single time. And so that is a huge responsibility. And that is something that I don't take lightly. I know that people are putting a lot of trust into me to handle that money well and to spend it well and to, do what I said I'm going to do. So imposter syndrome definitely came up a lot. I started taking I feel like I started limiting myself in the types of clients that I would bring on. I would bring on clients that had no marketing expertise. They hadn't ever done any marketing before. Nobody knew who they were because I felt like with those kinds of clients, I could really move the needle a lot. Like we could go from 0 to 50 and they would be super grateful. We're kind of building their business. And while that was fun, that's not always the best place to be. Those aren't always the best clients to have. They don't necessarily see marketing as an investment. They see it as an expense. They don't always have the expendable income to invest in marketing the way that would be the most effective. There's just some things that come with that stage of a business. So I talked to a mentor, which is actually my second piece of advice: find a mentor as quickly as you can. But I talked to him one day and I was telling him this. I'm like, I feel like I limit myself to these clients where I can make this huge impact really quick. And he's like, yes, but if you think about the big businesses that are already doing 85% of the marketing, how much more could they make if they had that extra 15% done for them? Even if you're only moving the needle 1% for them, they're already making, I mean, 1% of a company that makes $1 million a year or $10 million
It's a
dollars a
lot.
year is a lot. And it's usually significantly more than 50% for these small companies that aren't really making anything. So he challenged me to sort of reframe success in that way too, that you don't always have to move the needle these crazy distances because sometimes that one tiny little degree makes all the difference for a company. So I started to go after bigger clients, go after clients that already had things in motion and believe in myself that I actually could make a difference within that system. And then the second thing that really helped, like I said before, was finding a mentor. So this doesn't necessarily have to be like a formal coach or anything like that. I actually met my mentor through LinkedIn. He was a head copywriter for some really big brand names and had gone out on his own. He was a freelancer now. And I just paid him for consulting time. And we developed this really great relationship. He helped me understand not only copywriting, like he helped me hone my skills in copywriting, but he helped me with client management, client expectations, client boundaries, how to find clients, how to vet them. how to run a business successfully.
Mhm.
And also, whenever I did get into a room with a client that I gave me major imposter syndrome, a big client that I felt like, man, I don't think I'm going to be able to actually do anything better than what they're already doing. I felt confident taking those contracts because I knew that I could go back to my mentor and say, here's the brief. How should I approach this? Will you please edit this for me before it goes to the client? And so not only did I have him on my team, but I had him like actually helping me put together these deliverables. So I felt like I could take on things that I wasn't quite ready for because I had this big name copywriter that was going to make sure I didn't turn in anything that like wasn't going to work. So yeah, I think one, just knowing that a lot of people do it. If you put in the work and you put in the hours to be really good at what you do, a lot of people are successful at it, and you can definitely be that person too. Nobody's special. It's just a matter of whether or not you put the work in, and then also finding a mentor. Those were kind of the two big things for me.
It's so important, right? And it's in the beginning when you're just starting out, it always feels like, oh my God, I have to invest in people, into knowledge. But in the end, you realize like it will be the biggest asset because everything I'm investing in my network, into my knowledge, it's skills. Nobody can take that away from you. So whatever else you're going to do in life, does that knowledge, it's yours. And
It's so
to have
valuable.
people that support you, that have your back, that already walked the path you are walking at the
Mhm.
moment, makes all the difference, right?
Percent. And I think one other thing that actually really helped me, this is kind of a silly thing. I saw it on Instagram a while back, but this woman, she turned 30 and she decided that she was going to become this big bike racer. She's like, I've never been an athlete. I've never had a bike, but I'm going to like race in this huge women's race and I'm going to compete. And she just put in the work and she ended up winning. And she put in like a year's worth of work.
That's crazy.
And it made me realize, like, I'm almost 30. 30 is gonna be the year of, like, side quests for me, but I also apply that to my business where it's like, nobody is an expert when they start. Even if they started at 10, 12, 15 years old and they have a jump start on you, it doesn't mean that you can't be that. All it takes is hours and dedication to learning the knowledge and the skills, and you can
It's so
become an
true.
expert in literally anything that you want to.
Yeah.
I think
And
sometimes we
having mentors just make it faster.
mentors just speed it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's
Yeah.
resources out there everywhere, but as long as you're willing to put in those hours and not pigeonhole yourself into a certain identity just because you aren't that thing now, and then find someone to kind of, yeah, be the catalyst for that process, it's really beautiful how much you can learn in a short amount of time.
Thank you. That's very inspiring. I started running and I always thought that I hated running. And now
Mhm.
I recently run my first 10K and now I'm training for a half marathon and eventually I would like to do a
Yeah.
full marathon. And it's all mindset, right?
Mhm.
Because we have a specific identity, and I was like, okay, my name is Manon, and I am not a person that likes to run, and I truly believe that. And if that's your identity, it will not change. But if you see, like, okay, I can actually do things, change my identity, and then your actions also change because you changed the core. All of a sudden, it becomes possible.
100%. Yeah. I mean, I think they say it takes, what, 10,000 hours of practice to become fluent in a new language. That can apply to literally anything. I mean, we could be speaking French tomorrow, and it just there's no better time to start than today. If you feel like, "Man, I have imposter syndrome because 'cause I'm not good enough at this thing," just go get good enough. There are resources
Absolutely.
everywhere,
You
and
can
nobody's stopping
learn.
you. Just take that step today, and in 10,000 hours, you will be an absolute expert, and people will be asking you for help, and we can control so much around that. We can control so much of the doubt that we have by just taking action. So anytime I feel like, "Man, I'm not sure if I can confidently sell this service," or, "I'm not sure that I can confidently produce an ROI for this client," I go make sure that I can do that. I just go access resources. I dive into education. I dive into conversations with my mentor, because for me, it's not, well, I shouldn't do it because I can't. I can't do it right now. So I'm going to go figure out how to do it, you know, in 2 weeks. I,
I want to dive a bit deeper into the pivoting part because you also mentioned, okay, you overcame all these obstacles and these limiting beliefs, and moment you're growing a business and you receive feedback from your clients and the markets are changing. Of course, you're pivoting a lot. Usually, the idea you start with is not the idea you went. I think YouTube was first a dating site, if I'm correct.
really
Yeah.
interesting.
And
Okay.
look what they are now. So your first idea can completely change. And I remember the first trip you joined with us, you were still a solo freelancer, and then eventually you started Indigo, and now you pivoted to the local markets. And I'm just curious, like, how are you handling the pivots, and also in which states do you feel like, okay, I feel it's time to make the pivot, to just dare to take the leap and go into that direction?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I mean, the pivots have been exciting, to be honest. I think there's only so much time you can spend beating on a door that's not going to open. And then when you look to your left and your right and there's doors open everywhere, it's exciting to be able to walk through those. Not that Indigo was like, knocking on a door that wasn't open. It definitely, we still have a solid business there. It's just, it was harder to scale than we anticipated. It was harder to find the quality of clients that we wanted than we anticipated. We sat down, we looked at all the hours that we were spending building this business, where that time, manpower and time was spent, what the ROI was for that. And we realized, this isn't as good as it used to be. This ratio is not as good as it used to be. Are there other opportunities? Are there people that need our help, that are ready to accept our help, that are ready to invest in our help, that we could actually move the needle for? The answer was yes. And so we just said we'd be fools not to. Definitely, it's a little bit scary, but at the same time, it's not that different from what we were doing before. Like, it's all the same services, relatively the same services. It's just a little bit of a different niche, but that can be so fun, like meeting people that are not in the outdoor world, that are not in the travel world, that are like running a dog toy store down the street, and just kind of like entering into their world, learning what they do, and then figuring out how we can help. My biggest thing is I just love working with founders and businesses that are really passionate about what they do, and they want to get that out to the world. So it doesn't really matter what niche they're in, as long as we're working with someone that's excited about the process, puts a little bit of trust in us to make it happen. So that pivot felt quite easy, and it's been very, very fun. The pivot from a freelancer to a team was a lot scarier. I think, I touched on this. I have a hard time delegating, but also I had a really hard time figuring out what the right moment was for that, because I felt like I either had to be working 2 full-time jobs worth of work to bring someone on full-time, or I had to give up half of my income to bring someone on and, split that with them. So that was like a really hard decision, trying to figure that out. And I feel like I worked myself to the bone trying to get to the point where I had 80 hours of work per week to bring somebody else on. But I actually chatted with a few people from the Viomati Co community that were not on my trip, that are in the big community group chat, about how to build a team. And they encouraged me to not do either of those things. They encouraged me to actually find some contractors that would be open to like part-time work and use their expertise to go sell services that I don't currently offer. So we also realized that there was like a huge demand for paid ad strategies, which I don't do. I'm not an expert in. I could spend the time to become an expert, but that one's a little bit harder because you have to play with people's money to learn. And so I decided I'm just going to bring people on that are really, really good at this. And I'm going to use their stats and their time to sell new contracts that I don't currently have. So they're not taking any of the money that I was currently making. It's also not work that I had to do myself and then bring them into. It was an arm of our business that we were growing through contractors. So it was just like a really natural way to build a team. It's definitely built up our workload quite a bit, but in a way that doesn't really detract from the income that we were making before, and also didn't like bury us in work ahead of time. So yeah, that transition was a little bit trickier, but I think talking to the Viomati Co community made all the difference. It made so much sense. I don't know why I didn't think of it before, but something clicked, and I was like, oh my gosh, it makes sense. I just need to sell services through these people and just price it accordingly based off of what they're charging me for it. And here we are today. We're a team of 4, and we're looking at bringing on 2 more people.
That's so amazing. And that's also a big reason why we have this community, right? Because we're all at home. A lot of people are working at home or working in their own bubble. And then problems arise. And you're like, okay, well, who do I talk to? And that you can immediately tap into people that have all that knowledge. I think it's very, very powerful.
100%.
And I want to ask you, imagine someone is listening and they have an agency, it's growing very fast. And they are also at a point now, like, okay, do I give up some of my money or do I hire someone? If you can talk to Erin in that busy stage when she didn't have a team yet, which tip would you give her to avoid the mistakes, or not really mistakes, but to avoid all the hustle that happened around it, to make it to make the process go a little bit more smooth?
For sure. Yeah, that's a good question. I just want to start out with saying that I think that there's no such thing as running a business without hustle. I think that that is a common misconception that I see, that you're going to like buy all this time freedom and all this stuff. And you do have that. I have a very flexible schedule. But I also, I mentioned this to you earlier, I've been working till midnight every night this week just because of how, the work laid out.
Recognizable. It goes in
It's
seasons,
waves.
right?
It's waves,
Yeah.
it's seasons, but the benefit is you don't have to ask for PTO. You can just sort of, work till midnight and then take a day off. So, there's pros and cons. I think that the hustle will never go away, and I've come to accept that. But I also think that one thing that I wish I had done sooner is recognize the tasks that I don't enjoy doing, the tasks that sit on my to-do list for weeks, that also like take a lot of time and take a lot of effort for me because it's just not how my brain works. And hire someone part-time for 5 hours a week, 5 hours a month, even just to clear that. Because I think for me, the stress of those things sitting on my list for so long outweighed the, couple grand that I was going to spend having somebody do it. So that's when I brought my brother on. Actually, he's very, very good at business admin, sales, pipeline, lead gen, and he does all of that in the background now. But I brought him on very part-time to do that at first. And it was such a relief to me because I could just focus on the work. I didn't have to be posting on social media every day, having DM conversations, getting on Zoom calls. And so I just felt like from there, the work actually got better. The workload grew and I was able to handle it. We started to scale because he was bringing more work in. So I think the biggest thing was just like finding which tasks really, really drain me and just bringing someone in part-time to do those things.
When at the point you're really growing, it's very important to write down all the tasks in your business, everything you're doing on a daily, weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, quarterly base, and then sit down what really takes my energy and brain space and do I really not enjoy doing, but it is important. Outsource these things first and
Mhm.
then focus on your strengths and what actually matters so you can focus on growing the business, and it's worth every euro.
100%. Yeah. And it truly does come back to you. Like it does hurt to spend that money at first, but then you see that your business becomes much more efficient. Your business can scale the way that it's meant to. And yeah, now I have a full pipeline because I have someone helping me with it versus before I was like, I haven't posted on LinkedIn in 3 months. And if I lose a client, I'm screwed. So yeah, it's just the mental clarity that you get when those things are taken care of is so valuable.
Want to dive a bit deeper into the moment you joined the first workation,
Mhm.
because at the time it was workations. You also joined different retreats. What was the reason you signed up? And also, do you want to share a little bit of the impact it had on your entrepreneurial journey?
100%. I would love to share. Yeah. So, for those of you that don't know, I was scrolling Instagram one day while I was sitting at my desk and I came across a reel and it was from Manon. And she was talking about a workation coming up in Madeira, which I had never actually heard of the island before. But it was very beautiful. It looked so fun. It was, I think, the big Pico de Pico hike. And I just decided to comment, which I never do. I was like, sign me up. You DM'd me and you're like, actually, let's get on a call. And I was like, oh crap, what did I get myself into? But I just, something felt so right about it. It felt so down to earth. And I was at a moment in my business where I had grown. I had those agency clients. I had a few clients of my own. I felt pretty comfortable with where I was at, but I also felt really lonely. And I felt like I had some really big decisions for my business coming up on the horizon. And I don't have any entrepreneur family. I don't have any friends that are entrepreneurs. All of my connections that I had to the entrepreneurship world were digital. They were through LinkedIn, through Instagram. And it's just a lot harder to like access those people to have those conversations that you need to have, bounce questions off of people when you need to, when it's like you got to send a DM and wait for a week for a response. So I decided, one, I really needed an in-person networking opportunity. I really needed to be face-to-face with other people that were in a similar stage of business to me that could maybe help me figure out some of these big things coming up. And two, I started my business so that I could travel more, so that I could have more flexibility. And I realized in that moment that I had been chained to my desk for 2 years, every evening, every weekend, that early grind. I know every entrepreneur knows it well. And I decided, you know what, the work is never going to get slower from here. It's never going to get easier. It's only going to grow, hopefully. And I need to make travel very intentional, and I need to make time for it. I need to make space for it. Or else it's never going to happen. I'm just going to continue to get buried under this business that I'm building, and I'm going to end up hating it and shutting it down. So that was kind of the point that I was at from that first retreat. Was a break. I need to do what I set out to do when I started this business, and I need other people around me that can help me figure out some big moves to make in the future. So it just all sort of lined up, perfect timing. And then once I got on the call with you, I was like, wow, Manon's amazing. I feel like we would really get along. I love the business that you were building. And I actually realized like how serious of an operation you guys had too, because I think a lot of people, there's a lot of influencer trips. There's a lot of these kinds of things around Instagram that don't I don't wanna say they don't provide value, but sometimes they don't always provide, like, actual business value. It's more for, like, the content and the bragging rights on Instagram. But when I talked to you and saw how serious you were about bringing together actual business owners and implementing a lot of business development into the workshop, I thought, "What a great investment," and I get to go see an island that I've never even heard of, and it just yeah, felt like the right time. So it was a very easy decision for me.
Thank you so much, Erin, for sharing that. Yeah, I remember like you were the first person that really officially signed up, and I was like, okay, this is my sign that I just have to keep on going. I had a lot of people in the pipeline for that first event, but of course, it's waiting for the first payments, and I tried different concepts before, and they all didn't work out. And then you were supplied on that reel, and I was like, "This is meant to be." I remember I had a call with you, and I put a little candle next to my laptop because it keeps me a bit calmer if I have a chat, and I was just looking to the candle. I was like, "Okay." I was so passionate about the concept, and I knew I could bring the people together, and we fully booked that first event, and it was really, really magical, and I'm so grateful that you traveled all the way from the States to Madeira, an island in the middle of nowhere in the Atlantic Ocean, and that you were part of that first group. And eventually you also joined us last April to Tamracht and Tarazout, and then you were in a different stage in your business.
Mhm.
And of course, like our concept is also changing all the time because we are growing. We have a lot of people that are repeating and they are keep coming back, which we're super grateful for. But what was the intention for the second trip? Was it also to again take a little break from everything that was happening, or also because you were growing?
Yeah, I mean, Morocco has always been on my list. So when I saw you guys were going there, part of it was like, man, I get to go to Morocco with people that have been there and know it and can show me the ropes. And that's so, so cool. But also, you're very right. Like, I was in a very different stage of my business. I had grown and implemented the things from the first workation and things were going well. I started to feel really comfortable. I started to feel like, maybe this is just how my business will be forever. And that's okay. And actually, that thought kind of scared me. So at that point, I had brought my brother on, and we also had a third business partner. So it was a very different dynamic than just working by myself. And also, unfortunately, I had lost one of those agency clients. So I had two agencies that were sort of my like main retainer clients that made the business super comfortable for me. Like I felt like I actually had a salary that I could expect every single month. I had a workload that I could expect every single month. And then I would just bring on like little one off projects that sounded fun, but I just sort of kind of sunk into those two agencies, relied on that, got super comfortable. There were a couple of problems with that. One, I ended up being more like an employee than a business owner. And one of them was on the East Coast, one was on the West Coast. So I was working like all hours on their time schedules, which was
Yeah,
not
I
the
remember you woke up like 6 a.m. without breakfast or 5 a.m. immediately started working.
immediately started and then worked until like 6 or 7 p.m. to accommodate the West Coast people because I'm kind of right in the middle. So, um, long, long days. I was working on their schedules. And then, with two main clients, when one leaves, they actually ended up going under. Half of my income was gone overnight. And that was very scary because I had not done the work to build the pipeline that I needed to. So this was like kind of right before I brought on the two boys onto the team and then decided, wow, I really need someone to build this pipeline for me. I haven't done any networking in so long because I've just been working for these other agencies and not really building my own. So I brought on the two team members and we were in a stage of the business where we were really trying to define what the heck this was. Like, where are we going? What do we call ourselves? What kinds of, clients do we want to bring on? We had brought on a couple of clients and we were sort of experimenting with different packages and different ways to sell. I mean, it was very fun. It felt very fresh and new again, which I hadn't had in a long time. I think things had gotten really stale for a long time. And it just felt like a good time for another retreat where, we're trying to piece all these things together and build, like kind of rebuild our identity as an actual agency and not just like a little freelance group. And I knew that the Viomati Co retreat was going to be the place to do that. And it certainly was. We did lots of business development seminars that really helped me answer a lot of those questions, get really clear on what kinds of clients we want, what kinds of the clients we don't want, and then exactly how to position ourselves in the market so that we were a little bit different than a lot of the other agencies that are doing kind of the same thing. So it was super helpful in getting really clear on what that new identity would look like. And yeah, it definitely helped us take off. So yeah,
And I'm so grateful that you joined us again in beautiful Morocco. That was amazing.
it was stunning. I cannot wait to.
Morocco is magical.
Yeah, truly.
Erin, thank you so much for sharing about your experience with the Viomati Co. And, I'm just super grateful that you're in our network, that you're friends. We built this relationship over the past few years.
Yeah.
And it's just been so much fun to see each other, to see you grow, and you can see our growth. And it's just beautiful that you can help each other out. And that's also a big reason why we started the Viomati Co. I realized too many entrepreneurs are struggling by themselves, not taking days off.
Hmm.
There's so many things that come in the world of business, right? And it doesn't matter which stage you are, whether you're starting or you're literally making an exit, already did an exit, and you're like, what do I do now with my life?
Yeah.
All these different kind of profiles they join, but there's always something they get out of it because of the group, because of the vibe, and just taking time to reflect on your life and your business, looking with a bird's eye view, like, okay, what is it actually that I need in this stage? And just giving yourself some space to breathe gives so many insights, right?
100%. Yeah. Really taking that time out. I mean, I can't remember the last time that I took a week off of work. And not that I wasn't working in Morocco, like I certainly had things to do, but it was nowhere near the workload that I typically have. And you don't realize how much you need that space to think and to brainstorm and to like create a
And to
vision for
rest.
your business and to
Yeah.
rest and to like one thing that I think we don't talk about enough as entrepreneurs is our nervous systems. I know I think you had the same problem, but once I started my own business, I cannot tolerate caffeine anymore, which is crazy. And it's all my nervous system has just been on high alert for years because there's so much on your shoulders. And I think meditation, taking time out for yourself,
Yeah.
finding hobbies outside of work. Like I've recently started running and biking and swimming and doing all the
You're a very good climber.
climbing, yeah, and but I needed that. I didn't have that for the first 2 years, and once I had that, like, now when I get stressed, I'm like, "Actually, it's 1 p.m. and I can go for a run because I own my own business, and that's okay. The work will always be here when I get back." But one thing that the Via retreat really does for you is sort of gives you that reset, gives your nervous system time to rest and time to process everything that you work on a daily basis. Whereas, when I'm sitting at my desk working on client work or taking calls, I usually have this like low grade anxiety all the time because I just care so much and there's so much writing on the work that we do. So to go and have someone at a retreat like you and Robin like help us and give us tips. We're usually the ones that are helping and giving the tips and doing the strategies. So to have someone turn around and do that for you, it's such a good nervous system reset.
Oh,
And it
that's
really does give you a perfect vision for where you're supposed to go in the future.
mhm. No, thank you, Erin. And nervous system, it's such a big thing when you start this entrepreneurial journey. I remember when I started the Viomatico, and I combined that for 1 year, working as a manager 6 days per week. And in the night, I worked on the Viomatico, and I had 1 day off per week. And I was also working that full day for the Viomatico. I did it for a year. Of course, then eventually it wasn't possible anymore. So I decided to quit my stable job. And the moment I quit, like 2 months later, I went to a festival and I caught COVID, and I got long COVID, but I didn't know it at that time. And I had a headache that lasted for 10 weeks.
Oh my god.
Doctors couldn't discover what it was. Um, I did brain scans, I did everything. They only prescribed me pills. They were like, I can't find it. But I was like, I wake up with headaches and I go to bed with headaches. And
That's terrible.
it was very extreme. And in the end, I discovered a podcast. I actually recorded a podcast. I can link it in the description from this podcast with a lady. Her name is Nicole Sachs, and she is helping people with an overstimulated nervous system. And because of your overstimulated nervous system, you can actually get chronic diseases. You can get chronic pains. There are so many things that can happen. And I literally solved my headaches with journaling.
That's amazing.
That's that's crazy, right? That I
Crazy.
couldn't believe that to be true, because I was at the stage like, it sounds extreme, but I was like, I don't know if I can, if I want to continue to live. if this headache continues because I couldn't
Right.
work anymore. I couldn't be around people. Like my entire life was on a break, but I also needed to run a business and I just had energy for working 2 hours per week per day. And then I discovered this lady's podcast, eventually listened 20 episodes and I was like, okay, now let me try it out. And it was the first time in 10 weeks my headache disappeared. And I was like, that's crazy. We really have to learn how to regulate our nervous systems and also know that indeed, as entrepreneurs, there's always going to be some work, right? There's always something to do. So finding structure in your days, prioritizing your to-do list, also knowing that you can't control everything
Mhm.
and blocking space for yourself. We need weekends. We need some time.
Yes,
Otherwise, your body is your biggest asset, and when you have something happening to your body, it's like a big, how do you say that? Wake up moment, like, okay, indeed, I have to focus on my body and my health because otherwise my business can't even run because
exactly. You are the foundation. And yeah,
right.
when that crumbles, it all comes crumbling down. So yeah, I like to think of my relationship with myself as like a boss and an employee sometimes. And it's like, I would never treat an employee like this. I would never expect this from them. And so, I try to be nice to myself in that way. But yeah, I think you're totally right. Like there are so many ways we can take care of ourselves, but finding those like science-backed nervous system resets are
It's
gold
such a big
as
thing.
entrepreneur. I mean, for everyone, right? Life is overstimulating, but especially when you layer in the responsibility of running a business, I cannot stress enough how much that has changed my life, how much it's changed how I run my business, how much it's changed how much balance I have between work and play. And I honestly think that my work has gotten better for it. I think I've become a much more creative person. I read for fun, I write for fun outside of work. And I feel like it's just made me so much better at what I do inside of work. So, yeah, definitely don't turn all of your hobbies into monetary ventures. Have some things that are
Exactly.
just for
Have them
yourself.
just to
Be
play,
human.
right?
To play.
Yeah, to
Really,
be
yeah.
human, to not perform, just make fun.
Yeah,
And not everything needs to be a business or a business idea. Just enjoy the present moment as it is and don't always put that pressure on yourself. Easier said than done, but also the
100%.
more experience you get, the easier it becomes, in
Yes.
my experience. I hope
Mhm.
that's the same for you.
Agreed.
Okay, then two final questions. I always like to know the routines of the people in the podcast because I'm always interested in in people's day routines and when is your most creative moment, when not. So can you describe a usual day in the life? How does it look like?
I wish it was more fun, to be honest. No, I'm kidding. So I usually start work really early. I find that my most productive times are really early in the morning and really late at night. The middle of the day, it feels like everything needs to happen all at once. Grocery shopping, laundry. I have 2 crazy dogs that are sitting right next to me. You probably heard them at some point. But, midday, they're ready to roll. So, I feel like midday is just a very chaotic time for me. So, early mornings, I love to make some coffee, get a little breakfast. I've been better about eating breakfast these days.
Yay!
And when I say coffee, I mean decaf because there's no way I'm doing caffeine these days either. And yeah, I start working and I usually will block about 4 hours of work in the morning, starting at 6 or 7 in the morning. And then from there, I will get the dogs out. We'll usually go to the park and get their little wiggles out. And then they are much better the rest of the day. And then I'll come home. And lately, I've actually been getting my workout in the afternoons, just because I feel like I kind of need a mental reset, which is different because typically I work out super late at night. But for some reason, it was like making me really wired. So I've been doing that around 1 or 2 p.m. It's usually either running, climbing, lifting, or swimming. I'm actually also training for a full marathon right now, which is so fun because little backstory, I had like a 10-year injury and I was not able to do any fitness after being an athlete my whole life. I'm finally on the path to healing, very much almost there. So I've run a couple half marathons and now I'm training for a full marathon. So that's taking up a lot of that workout time. Eventually, I'd love to do an Ironman. So that's where the biking and swimming comes
Oh my
in.
god, you have to connect with Robin because Robin wants to do an
Really?
Ironman.
Okay.
Yeah, and he's looking for someone that wants to do it with him.
Amazing. Okay.
Okay, we
Let's
will talk about it after this podcast.
Perfect. Yeah, I just feel like that would be the ultimate like comeback story for me. So, yeah, definitely trying to just really take care of my body. I actually connected with one of the guys from the Morocco trip, Dieter. He is sort of a postural strength coach. And he noticed a lot of my like imbalances in my body from my back injury. And I worked with him for a few months and he taught me so much about breathing patterns, about how to lift, to rebuild like structural postural movement correctly. And so I've been implementing a lot of that into my workouts and it has changed my life. So also very cool connection from Viomati Co. It's really helped me heal in a lot of ways that I was not able to before. So that's been really cool. So movement in the afternoon is kind of the theme. And then I'll come home. I've been meal prepping dinners, so I've been eating a lot better, having more structure in that realm. And then after dinners, I usually will get back to work for a little bit when everything is calm. I think the science behind the early morning and late night working is that I don't have any emails coming in. I don't have any Slack messages. Nobody's needing anything from me. So I can really sit down and do the things that are important to me when it comes to work and, work that's hard for me to do when I have a bunch of distractions. So I'll turn on a little TV show and do some work in the evenings. And then yeah, that's pretty much my day to day. It sounds very boring, but as someone who was unable to be active for 10 years, I am thoroughly enjoying the structure that, like, fitness brings to that. It definitely brings a lot of balance to all the work that I was doing before, a lot of mental clarity. I feel just so much more fulfilled and so much more happy as a human, as someone who is an athlete my whole life. It brings a lot of fulfillment to me. So right now I'm just, like, reveling in the fact that that gets to be part of my routine, and making sure that it's very consistent. Seeing a lot of progress in my running and kinda getting back to those, like, pre-injury numbers and times has been just the right kind of challenge that my brain needed for a long time, so
I'm so happy to hear that you're able to be so active again and you have so much more energy and just to have that time where you're moving your body and doing sports, it's just a deload from your work, right? And
completely.
to get back in your body, and it's so important again for the nervous system, for the brain, for everything. And now that you're able to move again after so many years of pain, of course you have to celebrate that and
It's a miracle.
train for these things,
I
right?
should
It's not a
yeah.
miracle. You worked so hard for it.
Yeah.
And
It
you never gave up. That's the
yeah.
most important thing. I think that the biggest lesson we can all learn from that is if you have something, don't just accept the thing the doctor's telling you.
Mhm.
Try to do everything you can to fix it and don't give up. Like, there are solutions out there. It's just a way of finding it.
100%, and I had gone through 10, 12 different specialists, and, for anyone out there that's running a business that deals with some chronic pain, I get it. It takes up so much brain space. It's so much harder to run a business when you're dealing with that. I had a woman tell me that our bodies are meant to heal, and our bodies know how to heal. They just sometimes need a little bit of help. So I actually found acupuncture and chiropractor work mixed with the stuff that Dieter was teaching me about all the strength and imbalances and things like that. That was sort of the sweet spot for me. And finding those therapies has changed my life. It also helped my nervous system a ton. So acupuncture, if you're like super anxious, can't sleep, all the things that come with
It's
running a business,
true. It works
acupuncture
too.
is gold. Highly, highly recommend. But yeah, just like the daily movement, I think it doesn't even need to be intense, even if it's just a walk. It truly does reset something in your brain. And also, I think there's something about it for me personally, and maybe people find this in other avenues, but I spent 10 years not being able to set any like physical goals for myself because my body just wasn't capable. I would always disappoint myself. I always fell short of those things. And now being able to like set a goal like running a marathon or running an Ironman is so fulfilling to know that all it takes is effort on my part, effort and discipline. And I don't have these like roadblocks in the way that I used to have. I'm fully capable if I just put my mind to it. Having something like that outside of the business that you do, I also think is really important. Something to actually work towards, some goal that you set. I think it makes you a better business owner too. It makes you more fulfilled as a human. It also builds trust with yourself, because you say you're going to do something and then you set out to do it and you do the work to make it happen. And sometimes it's nice when that's not connected to like your income stream or you definitely want to do that within the business. But I would encourage you to also find, ways outside of the business if you're not already, to just be proud of yourself and build that trust with yourself that way.
That's beautiful. I really love that. I would say you grow your self-confidence by doing the things you promised yourself you would do, and that's in any part in life. Like
100%.
having a physical goal or maybe a hobby goal, completely outside of business. It stretches all the other areas.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay, and to close it off,
Yeah.
if you could leave listeners with one mantra, a lesson, or piece of advice on growth, what would it be?
It's a really question. Okay, let me think about it for a second. I think when it comes to growth, I think it's meant to be uncomfortable. It's meant to be scary. And I think the sooner that you can accept that those things are true, the sooner you can kind of face them head on and make a game plan for what it looks like to move through that. I think for a long time, I was sort of plagued. My dad would always tell me, he's like, your biggest enemy is the 6 inches between your ears. My brain, because I would always limit myself because I thought, man, this feels out of my realm. This feels like something I'm not capable of. And I hate failing at things. So I'm not going to do it. But when I was able to accept, like, I am going to fail, it is going to be uncomfortable, but that's how you learn. That's how you grow, quite literally, is you fail and then you learn from that and then you do better the next time. That I think when you can accept those things, make a plan for how to move through it efficiently. So we're not just like failing at the same thing over and over again. You're actually taking a look at the things that you could improve upon, making a plan from there. It gives you a lot of agency in that growth process. It gives you a lot of control over the growth process that you maybe don't feel like you have when you're just focusing on how scary it is and how you don't know how to be successful. There's a lot of times when I sign a new client and I'm not sure exactly how to approach the project, but I know that I've been in that position before and I've always delivered because I just make a game plan for how to move through it efficiently, how to learn from every mistake that I make along the way. And recently I signed one of the biggest clients I've ever had and I was terrified. I got major imposter syndrome. Can I do this? Can I be successful? And I remember going for a run and telling myself over and over and over again, you've been in this exact position before. You did not know how you were going to approach it, but you figured it out. And you always will. It takes some effort. It takes some extra time. It takes some extra research. But this is not an unfamiliar position for you to be in, even if it's that next stage of growth. Even if you're one rung higher on the ladder, this is not unfamiliar to you. You're very, very capable of climbing one rung higher because you've done it this entire time. Yeah, it's unknown in the sense that you haven't maybe been in that position before, but it's not unknown in the sense that you don't know how to grow. We all know how to grow. It just takes some effort, some research, some time, and maybe have that mentor come in and teach you a little something.
Mindset is everything.
It is. You can get used to being uncomfortable. Like you can get used to it. You build a tolerance to it. And if you can shift your mindset and view it as a positive thing, um, it becomes exciting, truthfully. Like being uncomfortable becomes exciting. I think sometimes being comfortable is the last place that I want to be. Like it's boring, you know? I'd be a little scared to like keep going. But it's the same thing when you're like going cliff jumping or you're trying a new sport or you're, on the start line of a marathon. Like it's scary, but you're so grateful to be there and you know that you've put the work in to be successful at it. It's the same thing in work. It's exciting.
Getting comfortable in the uncomfortable because that's where the magic happens.
100%. Yeah, build that tolerance to it.
Thank you so much, Erin, for for sharing. Sorry. Thank you so much, Erin, for sharing all your knowledge. For the people that are listening, where can they find you? Where can they connect with you? I already want to make a little note on it. I will add Erin's LinkedIn in the description and also her Instagram. But Erin, if you can also say it out loud so the people hear it and they can connect with you.
Perfect. Yeah, that would be great. I would love to connect with everybody. I'm going to have to look up what my Instagram name is. But LinkedIn would be fantastic. It's, Erin Salisbury. I'm friends with Manon on there, so I'm sure it'll come right up. It's a picture of me hiking. And then our website is Indigo Media Solutions. So if you ever want to, kind of check out what we're doing, it's kind of a fun website, some fun pictures of us, hiking and climbing and kayaking and things. And then Instagram, I think I'm just going to say my personal Instagram because my business Instagram has been dead for about a year. It was not the most profitable channel for us. So we just sort of stopped putting resources into it. But Erin Salisbury on Instagram, also friends with Manon, follow the Viomati Co. So it should be pretty easy to find me there. We're back. We're back. Yeah. So if
Yeah.
anyone wants to connect, on the business side of things, I always love connecting with other business owners, but also on the personal side of things, I'm, super active. I love climbing, skiing, hiking, running. So if anyone wants to just connect over those kinds of hobbies too, I would love to just meet everybody. So yeah, come follow me, send me a DM. I absolutely love meeting new people. So yeah.
Well, thank you so much. And for everyone listening, wish you an amazing rest of the day, week, evening, whatever time you're
Wherever you are in
listening.
the world.
And thank you so much for tuning in and see you in the next one.